So we're going through the manual for running the shul. We talked about what happens if you need to sell a shul, what you do with the money. And that's, dealing with the money is one of the things that the Gabaim have to deal with. The other thing that the Gabaim have to deal with in a shul, in a synagogue, the organizers of a synagogue have to deal with, is how do they figure out the Torah portions to be read on each individual week? How do we know what to read each week? And so it's very interesting that in the second half of this third chapter of Megillah, we're going to start going through the Torah portions. And we're going to see, by the way, that some of these are absolutely identical to the ones that we read today, and some are different. And we'll see, by the way, that Maimonides in his Mishnah Torah actually mentions both traditions. So he seems to recognize the difference. So we're going to begin in the fourth Mishnah of the third chapter. Rosh Chodesh Adar shechal liyot b'Shabbat, korin b'Parshat Shkalim. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbat, then they're going to read the portion of Shkalim. This is from Kitisa. It's the reminder to bring the half shekel. Seems like, well, we know they were bringing the half shekel in the time of the Mishnah because there's the whole tractate of Shkalim, but clearly we're going to announce it in the synagogue on Rosh Chodesh of Adar if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbat. Shabbat, if Rosh Chodesh Adar doesn't fall on Shabbat, Makdimin lishavar. If Rosh Chodesh falls in the middle of the week, we're going to bring it forward to the Shabbat before. So in other words, we're going to always read the portion of Shkalim, the Shabbat, either on Rosh Chodesh or the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh. That's the rule. And we still keep that rule today. And then if we've read it the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh, umafsikin l'Shabbat acheret, and then we wait one Shabbat. We have a break on the next Shabbat. So that the Shabbat before Adar, we read Shkalim, we have a break. Basheni Zachor. So the next Shabbat, we read Zachor. Actually, according to our current counting, Zachor, yeah, that's right. And Zachor is I think according to our current counting, we'd actually wait 2 weeks before reading Zachor, because Zachor should be the Shabbat before Purim. Maybe when it says on the second, they mean the second of the special Shabbaton. Not quite clear. So maybe there's a difference here. Bashlishit para aduma. The third one, the red heifer. This is the portion of the red heifer which we read just before the beginning of the month of Nisan, so as to remind people to get all their ritual purity sorted out before Pesach. Baravit hachodesh hazeh. On the fourth one is hachodesh hazeh. That's the second Shabbat after Purim, and that is directly before Rosh Chodesh. That is directly before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. HaChodesh hazeh yeh lachem Rosh Chodeshim. This month shall be for you the beginning of months. It's Parshat HaChodesh. We always read it before Nisan. B'chamishit chozrin li sidran. So on the fifth, we just resume the ordinary order. And the Mishnah seems to know that we are reading through the Torah on Shabbatot in some ordinary order, although it's not clear at this point whether they are following our order. There are two traditions: there's an annual cycle and a 3-yearly cycle. So it's not quite clear. It's not quite evident here actually which cycle they're following. And interestingly, the Mishnah, by the way, doesn't tell us the annual cycle. It's only telling us the breaks from the cycle, as if the Mishnah expects us to know the annual cycle in some way. And then the Mishnah concludes, Lakol mafsikin. They interrupt for anything. What does interrupt for anything mean? B'Rosh Chodashim, we interrupt for Rosh Chodesh. B'Chanukah, for Chanukah. B'Purim, we interrupt on Purim. B'Ta'aniyot, on Ta'aniyot. For fasts, for ma'amadot. We're going to find out what ma'amadot are a bit later. Uvi Yom Kippurim, and for Yom Kippur. So we interrupt on all of these. And this, by the way, feels as if they've got the 3-year cycle, because we don't interrupt. We add an extra reading on Rosh Chodesh and Chanukah and Purim and fasts and so on. We actually add an extra reading. We'll interrupt for Yom Kippur and for festivals. But for most of these examples, we add, we don't interrupt. So this feels a bit like they have a slightly more flexible cycle than we have, maybe a 3-year cycle. So they don't mind just missing out a Shabbat, losing a Shabbat for Purim, or losing a Shabbat for Chanukah and so on. The Pesach, Korin b'Parshat Moadot Shel Torat Kohanim. On Pesach, they read from the portion of the festivals in Torat Kohanim. Now, Torat Kohanim means the book of Leviticus, the book of Vayikra in the Mishnah. So they're going to read from Leviticus. That's Leviticus 23. It's the parsha of Emor. And Ba'atzeret Shiva Shavuot, which is from the parsha of Re'eh. Rosh Hashanah, B'chodesh Hashvi'i B'echad L'chodesh. On Rosh Hashanah, they read on the 7th day, on the 1st of the month. That's also from Vayikra, Leviticus, from Parshat Emor. Yom Kippurim Acharei Mot. On Yom Kippur, they read after the death. That is from the parsha of Acharei Mot. B'Yom Tov HaRishon Shel Chag Korin b'Parshat Moadot Sheb Torat Kohanim. On the first day of the festival, when the Mishnah refers to the festival, B'Yom Tov HaRishon Shel Chag, the festival, that always refers to Sukkot, by the way. So on the first day of the festival, we're talking about Sukkot now. Korim b'Parshat Moadot Sheb Torat Kohanim. They read the portion of the festivals in Torat Kohanim. That's Leviticus 23, as we did on Pesach. Uvisha kol yemot hechag b'korbanot hechag. And on the other days, we read the offerings of the festival. And what should strike us, just going through this list, is that these, in general, are not today's readings. For Yom Kippur, actually, it matches. On Yom Kippur, we do read from Acharei Mot. But all the others are different. We never read any of these other Torah portions on festivals. So what's going on? I couldn't resist, if you don't mind, bringing you the Mishneh Torah. So this is Rambam's articulation of the halacha. He doesn't tell us this, by the way, in his commentary on the Mishnah, but he does tell it to us in the Mishneh Torah. And he starts by explaining the background. Moses instituted that on every festival, Israel should read about it and its issues. And they should read about it and ask about it and explain about it. So we need to study every festival at the right time. And then Maimonides asks, Umahen Korin, and what do they read? And now he's going to quote our Mishnah. B'Pesach, b'Parshat Moadot, Sheba Torat Kohanim. He quotes our Mishnah exactly. Leviticus 23 from Emor, which we know is not the right parsha, or at least not the one that we consider today the right parsha. And then he adds, but uchvar nahagu ha'am likrot b'yom rishon mishchu k'chu lachem. But the people have already adopted the custom of reading Mishchu K'chu Lachem. This is from the Parsha of Bo, and that is the portion we really read on Pesach. So the Rambam knows what the custom is, and he knows what the Mishnah is. He says, yeah, we should read according to the Mishnah, but the people have this custom. And then I won't read. I mean, you can find the rest of the Mishneh Torah on the source sheet. I won't read it through, but essentially he goes through in the Mishneh Torah, just like a manual for running a shul, like an updated version of our Mishnah. But he goes through the whole of the list of the Torah readings that we now read today on festivals, as if it's beautiful that it's called the Mishneh Torah, the repetition of the Mishnah, the repetition of the Torah. And he does really replace the Mishnah. The Mishneh Torah is written in the style of the Mishnah, and it's replaced the Mishnah as our working guide to running a shul in this particular issue. How does it go on? Well, the Mishnah is then going to go on to a few more festivals where the Torah readings look a little bit more familiar. But Chanukah Banasiim, on Chanukah princes, these are the offerings of the princes at the dedication of the Mishkan. Chanukah is, of course, the rededication of the temple in the time of after the battle with the Greeks. So we read about the original dedication in the desert. But Purim, Vayavo Amalek. On Purim, we read, and Amalek came. We recognize that. We do that today. Barashei Chodeshim, we read the portion Uvarashei Chodshechem. On Rosh Chodesh, we read Uvarashei Chodshechem on the first of your months. But Ma'amadot, but Maaseh Bereshit. On Ma'amadot, we read the Maaseh Bereshit, the account of the creation of the world. Now, what is that? That is not familiar to us from our synagogue today. Let's just flick down, if you don't mind taking a little interlude, to a little Mishnah from Tanit, which we will, by the way, learn. We're going to learn Tanit as the next Masechet. Because we haven't looked at Tanit, I just wanted to preview this Mishnah. What are these Ma'amadot? And the Mishnah in Tanit explains, Eluhen Ma'amadot. These are Ma'amadot. And the verse says, Tzavet b'nei Yisrael ve'amarta lehem et korbani lachmi le'ishai reach nichuchi tishmeru li. My offering, my food, you shall guard. Tishmeru li. You have to guard it. And the Mishnah asks, how can a person's offering be offered and he's not there to guard it? So the Mishnah explains that the Nevi'im Harishonim, the early prophets, instituted 24 Mishmarot, which are watches. Same word as to guard, shomer. So the whole of Israel divided effectively into 24 groups. And by the way, these groups would take care of the Beit Mikdash for, I think, a week at a time. So they'd go up to Jerusalem to take care of the Beit Mikdash for that week. And for each mishmar, there was a ma'amad in Jerusalem consisting of Kohanim, Levi'im, and Yisraelim. And when the mishmar went up to Jerusalem, the priests and the Levi'im went up to Jerusalem, but the Yisraelim, the Israelites, that mishmar, assembled in their cities, and they would fast, and they would read the story of the creation of the world, as if to say that the world was created to serve God via the sacrifices. So while our colleagues are in Jerusalem doing the sacrificial service for that week, the colleagues at home they'd fast and they'd pray and they'd read the story of the creation, and they'd read essentially, it lasted for a week. So on every day of the week, they'd learn one of the days, they'd read one of the days of creation. So these are the Ma'amadot that the Mishnah knows and refers to. On Ma'amadot, they'd read the account of the creation, the Maaseh Bereshit. Batanyot, brachot uklalot. On fast days, they'd read the blessings and the curses. This is in at the end of Vayikra and Devarim. Now, we don't read these on fast days now. On fast days, we read Vayichal Moshe, the petition of Moshe for the golden calf. And the Rambam explains, look, on fast days instituted because some disaster had befallen the people, they'd read the blessings and the curses. And he agrees that for regular calendar fast days, we read Vayichal Moshe. We read the parsha of the gold right after the golden calf. The Ein mafsikim b'klalot eila echad koreh hakol. We don't make a break in the curses, but one person reads the whole of the passage of the curses. And this is still the case today, actually, when we read the curses in the end of Leviticus and the end of Deuteronomy, they're all read in one go. One person reads the whole. On Mondays and Thursdays, on Shabbat and Mincha, they read according to the regular order. That's still our custom today. And this doesn't count as part of the reading. In other words, we read on Mondays and Thursdays and Shabbat afternoons, but we still pick up, if you like, the following Shabbat morning from where we started the previous Shabbat afternoon, Monday and Thursday. So in other words, Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat afternoon are in addition to the regular order. They're not part of the regular order. And why do we do this? Well, we're going to quote a pasuk. Vaydaber Moshe Moadei Adonai B'nai Yisrael. Moses declared to the people of Israel the seasons of the Lord. Mitzvatan shehu korin kol echad ve'echad bizmano. It's their mitzvah that each one should be read about in its own time.